The following presentation is brought to you by kmmedia.pro. Please visit kmmedia.pro for more information. Now stay right where you are as we present. Welcome to Positive Talk Radio, evolving ideas, one conversation at a time. Great guests, dynamic stories and interviews, plus new thoughts on a wide range of topics and concepts. I hope that you'll hang with me, Kevin McDonald, my friends, and of course, you. As together we work to understand why we are all here and what we can do to make our world a better place for all of us. To be happy, be kind, and live in peace together. Yep, that's Positive Talk Radio. Episode of Positive Talk Radio. It is Monday afternoon, and I just love talking to this gentleman. He is a marvelous soul. He's got a great book out. He's got actually a bunch of books out. He's an author. He also is a playwright now, I understand, and he also has been working with a charity that is, I think, got a great cause. And we're going to talk about all of that with Stephen Murray right now. Stephen, welcome to Positive Talk Radio. How are you?
Hey, thank you, Kevin. I'm just fine. And how about yourself? It's lovely to be back on your show again.
It's wonderful. But now remember, the last time you were on my show, it was my Independence Report.
That's correct. It was indeed. But it was the same concept, positive.
Yes, it is. It's what I found was that Positive Talk Radio is when they talk about branding and getting your niche right and all that kind of stuff, it's clearer as to what the content is of Positive Talk Radio versus My Independence Report. But he still has his episode up on My Independence Report. If you want to go there, that's still available to you, and you can go to myindependencereport.com and just search for Stephen Murray, and you can watch that show, which we talked about his books at the time, but he's now written another book, and it's a complete departure for him because the other books were murder mystery type things, and this is Discovering Christmas Spirit. What made you decide to write this one?
Good question, Kevin. As you mentioned, the last book I wrote was a crime fiction.
Yep.
It was about three ladies that worked for the most exclusive escort agency in Las Vegas, where I live. And I have to mention I did no research on that book. It was all imagination, 100%. And these three ladies, they decided to come up with a plot to get rid of the guy that runs it because he treated them like dirt. And with these ladies, as they plan and plot and connive and scheme to execute the murder and actually follow through with it and then have to live with the consequences. And I spent 2 years writing that book, and I was kind of drained from dealing with the sleazy side of Las Vegas and the blackmail and the libel and all the seedy side, and I wanted to write something different. And the book came out in July, and I just happened to be flicking channels one night, and I happened to land on Hallmark celebrating their Christmas in July. And I kind of like those movies, but they all seem to be pretty much the same, with somebody at Christmas, they've got this high-pressure job in New York, and they've got to go back to the small little town and meet their childhood sweetheart and what have you. And I thought, I'd just like to have a stab at writing something warm and fuzzy, feel good. And that's what I did. I sat down and wrote just a very warm, uplifting Christmas book.
Well, I was just reading the synopsis to it, and that particular book, I think you should write a screenplay around that. I think it would make a great Christmas movie, because basically, as a result of an unfortunate accident, 5 injured passengers find themselves stranded in a quaint remote village for the duration of the Christmas holiday, where they have to confront some of their demons, and they learn. That would be a very interesting case study of human behavior and how people react to one another and stuff like that. I think that'd be a great Christmas movie.
Well, thank you, Kevin. I kind of agree with you. It is more of a character-driven story. You're absolutely right. And some of the people who have reviewed it have said you don't necessarily need to read this book at Christmas. It just happens to take place at Christmas time in this Christmas Carol village where the people live it all year long. But it is a case study in the relationships of personalities and how people react to different things and how they're affected by their environment and what have you. And
Oh,
uh,
exactly.
I'm hoping that I don't know anything about screenplays, Kevin. I think that's probably going beyond the limit of my talents. Um, but I am hoping that someone somewhere along the way will discover it and push it towards a television station or a movie producer, somebody like that. I think all 5 of the novels that I've produced could pitch up on TV.
I think that you're right. And by the way, just as an aside, when my kids were smaller and it was the mid '80s or the early '90s, our two favorite Christmas movies, it really had nothing to do with Christmas except they played Christmas music in them. One was Die Hard with Bruce Willis, and the other one was Lethal Weapon with Mel Gibson.
Oh
Uh,
my.
because they were set in the Christmas time, but they weren't necessarily. It didn't revolve around the holiday. It just happened to be in the background. So this could be one of those, but it could be it could be a really cool Christmas special or a Christmas movie. So we'll put the word out there that a screenwriter comes to you and decides to take one of your books and turn it into a movie. That'd be awesome.
That would be awesome. Thank you, Kevin.
Now you're doing all kinds of different stuff right now, including your writing. Yeah, let's talk about the co-authorship of the project you're working on.
Yes, it's a play. One of your previous guests you had on, I think, just after I was on last year, her name was Nancy Nelson. And Nancy Nelson's a very good friend of mine, and uh, she was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's about 8 or 9 years ago. And over the years, we've tried to do some fundraising for Alzheimer's Association through selling books and so on and so forth. And a couple of years ago, we took that play Love Letters by A.R. Gurney. I don't know if you've ever read it, but it's a
Heard of it, but I
play for
haven't read
two
it.
people, or I don't know if you've seen it, I should say. Play for 2 people, and they just sit side by side and they read the script. And um, it's about 2 people that start writing when they were kids, and they go through a period of like 50, 60 years. And that's the storyline, just them corresponding between each other. We thought we might want to do something similar, but specialize on Alzheimer's. And she would write, it would be 2 people who were childhood sweethearts, if you will. They were high school prom king and queen, and they lose track of each other and they reconnect, some 40 odd years later. And as they start writing to each other or emailing to each other in this day and age, she is diagnosed with onset Alzheimer's, and I have a relation. I have a twin sister who's developed Alzheimer's, and so I take on the role as caregiver, and it's really supposed to be educational as well as entertaining and informative. She writes from this perspective of what she's learning as a person who's living with Alzheimer's, and I'm writing about it as how I'm coping with helping my sister who's been diagnosed and how I have to try and become a caregiver for her. So anybody that's been a caregiver for somebody with Alzheimer's, we all sort of unfortunately have to tread the same path, and we all are faced with the same things. And we just thought, if we wrote this play, maybe people who are entering into that world will learn something from it. So that's the intent. We have been writing on it now for quite a while, and we've just about wrapped it up, and we're sending it to somebody to have it edited. We're on the final stages of getting it completed, so that's good.
That is really awesome. That's if you can help people understand Alzheimer's a little bit better and what it does and memory loss and stuff, because in your research, Stephen, what did you find as far as what happens to those people as they lose their memory? Are they aware of it? Are they concerned with it? Or is there a certain point when they just they lose the faculties to be able to care, and then they just kind of exist on a day-to-day basis? It's an odd concept for me. I've been around. My grandmother passed from Alzheimer's years ago, and but I never could tell whether or not how devastating it was to her if she knew it was happening to her. In the early stages, she knew she was losing her memory, but at one point, you understand what I'm asking here?
Yes, yes, I do indeed. My mother passed from Alzheimer's too, but she was in Australia, and so it was doubly hard for me because I'd communicate over the phone. I think Alzheimer's, there's still so much to learn from it. You know, different people are affected in different ways. And essentially, there's 7 different stages of Alzheimer's. There's the first stage, second, third, fourth, and fifth. And some people experience behavioral changes, and others aren't affected by behavioral changes at all. Some people, they'll start cussing and swearing, something that they might not have done if they were cognitive of all their faculties. But my mother didn't swear or cuss at all when she had it, and she was quite far down the line. But there are certain behavioral changes. We're told that once people get to a certain stage, it's gradual down to the 5th level, and then all of a sudden it's like dropping over a cliff and down a severe crevice, and then it affects people really bad, and they go back to a time, I'm told, where they're happy. They choose a place and a time where they're happy. And the amazing thing is, things like music, there's a connection between music and people with Alzheimer's, because you can go and sit with people who've got Alzheimer's, and if somebody's there playing the piano and they're playing these songs from years ago, a lot of these people with Alzheimer's, they'll remember all the words to those songs, yet they won't be able to remember what they've had for dinner half hour earlier. So it's, the brain's an amazing thing. And I think there's still a lot of unknowns about Alzheimer's.
It is. We took my 2-year-old son to see my grandmother, and she was at that time in an Alzheimer's care unit, and she acted like she was a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old and was meeting her playmate, who was my 2-year-old son.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, "Oh, a baby," and it was, it was so out of character, so unlike her. She would never. She was a dignified woman, and she never would have acted that way, you know. But she went down. She went down that road, and I guess I don't. What I don't understand is, do they know they're going down that road, or does it just kind of creep up on them, and then they lose their memory and they can't remember if they're sick or not?
I think it depends again on the individual. Some of them, I think they know they're going down that road, and they'll go and have like memory tests and memory checks, and they're diagnosed. And then, like Nancy, she made some lifestyle changes. She was missing appointments with friends and things like that, and so she went to be tested, and that's when she was diagnosed. But there are certain lifestyle changes that people can make to slow the process down. But other people, like my mother, swore that she hadn't lost her memory at all, and she didn't understand why she was in a memory care facility. But she had, it was sad. And my business partner's wife, she lived here, and I used to go and visit her, and her husband lived next door. She was in memory care, and he lived next door, and go and visit her. When I went to see her, she'd point out all these family people in the photos, and she'd say, "Well, and this is my husband, but I haven't seen him for years. And, he'd left like half hour before I arrived." So she didn't know. She didn't know that her memory was gone. I think she thought she had all of her faculties with her.
That is so interesting to me. But by the way, wish Nancy well for me, if you please.
I certainly will. I certainly will.
And I hope that this work that you're doing with her gets traction, and because it's you're right, it's a very misunderstood thing, and unless you're the family member that's going through it, I imagine how horrific that is for everybody involved to go through that. It can be really hard. So I think we could our understanding of it is not complete, and we need to know more.
No, no, it isn't. It isn't complete, and sometimes you'll find that the people with Alzheimer's they start repeating themselves constantly. And when I used to call my mother in Australia, she knew I was working. The first thing she always used to say is, "When you're sending RJ over to pick me up and bring me to America?" Well, RJ is my business partner, but it didn't occur to her that he was also working. She knew I was, but that was like the first question out of her mouth every time I called. And it was like, as soon as she heard my voice, her brain just went in that direction, down that one path. And that's where I said that the brain's an amazing thing. We don't, there's so much about it, how it works, that we just don't understand.
Well, there is something that I do understand, that the other thing that you've been spending time doing, and I want to talk about that a little bit, some in depth, because I think what you're doing is nothing short of absolutely fabulous. Tell us about the building project you're doing.
Oh, the fundraiser for Homes for Our Troops?
Yes.
Yes. Kevin, there's an organization out there called Homes for Our Troops. They're based in Taunton, Massachusetts. And what Homes for Our Troops do, they build homes for severely wounded veterans, so that when they come back, they can have homes where they can walk through the corridors with their walkers, and they can pull shelves out from above the sink, and there's space under the sink where they can pull their walker up and sit down and wash dishes and things like that. So they're not quite so dependent on other people, and it helps them get a sense of independence. And last year, as you well know, we were all received these what they call those checks from the government, that stimulus checks.
Stimulus checks, yes.
And I've been very fortunate, Kevin. I don't personally need that stimulus check, so I thought I'd like to give it to somebody that could make use of it. And I did a little Google search and stumbled across Homes for Our Troops. And I looked to see what they did in Nevada, and they had 3 projects going. And I thought, so I called them and I sent off my stimulus check, and I said, if ever there's a fundraiser out here, let me know. I'd like to attend it. And they said, well, right now there are none scheduled. And I said, why? And they said, nobody stepped up yet. So I said, fine, I'll step up. So I'll give it a shot. And it was a load of fun. I checked out the organization. What I like about them is it's a shoestring operation. They devote about 89 cents of every dollar, I believe, actually goes to the cause. Only 10% is, or 11% is used for overhead, which is a remarkable percentage.
That's really
They've
good.
built 329 homes so far nationwide, and they've really got it down to a fine art. And so it was a challenge. It was a lot of fun, but it certainly was a challenge. We found a place to hold the event, and we got some entertainment, and spent a lot of time calling local organizations to see if they would give gift certificates for auctions, and got some hotels to give gift certificates, and restaurants and department stores. And I think we got about $11,000 worth of gift certificates to auction off. And we actually raised $15,000, which was $5,000 for each of the 3 veterans' homes in Nevada. But it's a very, very worthwhile cause. And earlier on this year, one of the homes was actually completed, and we got invited to the key ceremony. And I was amazed when I looked inside the home and saw all of the the small little things by like lowering the switches on a wall, a light switch,
Exactly.
so they can reach it without having to stand up or, put their artificial legs on, and the plugs in the wall, having them higher up instead of so low on the floor. Tiny little details like that that really made a difference. So
Well,
I feel
just
very strongly about this organization, and I just love them dearly.
well, that's awesome. Well, especially things like the restrooms, the bathrooms that need to be modified,
Yes.
so that people can get in and out without assistance or minimal of assistance and that kind of thing. Because there is, these guys gave their all for this country. And it is, I think it's wonderful that the charity's doing that, but I think that the government, we all should be making sure that if we send a 18-year-old kid to war and he comes back maimed, that we make sure we take care of him for the rest of his life. Do you
I,
agree?
I agree. I agree with you wholeheartedly. But it's nice to have these private organizations that are actually stepping up to the plate and they're making it their sole focus. Um, I'm certainly not excusing the government by any stretch of imagination, but there's an awful lot of worthwhile causes out there. We mentioned Alzheimer's, but there's, leukemia and lymphoma and Parkinson's, and there's just cancer, and there's so much. So it's nice that there are people who are starting organizations, setting up these operations and making things happen, and they're making a difference.
Absolutely. By the way, there's a group up here that I interviewed last week, and today they're having their banquet. And what they do, and they're called the 100 Women of Snohomish. And what these gals do is, this is not a charity, by the way. These are just a group of people. Then there's a chairman and a vice chairman, and they each 3 times a year get together and they each provide $100, which is not a great deal of money, but $100 each. Well, you put 100 times 100, and that's $10,000
Yes.
that they can then they award that to a charity that wins. They have a little lottery system and they win that, and so that they can help local people. Like the charity they did this last time was this charity provides backpacks with food in them, so school kids that don't have any money or their parents don't have any money to feed them on the weekends, the only time they get food is at school, that they provide them with some foods so that they can eat on the weekends and stuff. So, there's lots of,
Nice.
there's lots, and in 2 years they've raised $109,000, and we can all do that if we, because you think about it, Stephen, $100 doesn't matter much to almost everybody, but it can matter. It can make a great deal to the small percentage of people who actually need it.
Absolutely. No
So
question about it.
so
And it's
let's
wonderful those ladies are doing it. But again, it does start in many ways at the local level. It takes somebody
yes,
locally to say, let's do this, or a group of people, and expand it and build upon it, and it grows and makes things happen.
and congratulations, way to step up, young man. You should get.
Oh, actually, it's all the people. It's amazing the number of people that came through, and bless their hearts, people came through with donations at all level, and some people can't necessarily afford much, but when it comes to veterans, I think people are pretty giving, and they recognize the sacrifices made, not just by the veterans, but their families as well. Their families are making huge veterans. The husbands and wives of those that have been out there serving that come back maimed, and the kids, they make huge sacrifices too. You know?
Oh, absolutely, and well, and so how big are these houses? Are they like 2 bedroom or 3 bedroom?
Yes, there are a couple of bedrooms. This one that we saw was like 2,800 square feet.
Oh,
And,
wow, that's huge.
well, of course, the bathroom and the shower has to be really huge, for a start. Um, and the closets are pretty huge as well. But the dining room area is pretty big, and the kitchen was a nice size. Um, it was just very, very nicely put out and laid out and planned. My sense is that they're pretty much cookie cutter kind of homes, if you will. Um, they probably stick to the one format wherever possible, I suspect. But they did a nice job of putting it together. And the day they turned over the keys, I mean, the veteran and his wife and kids, they were just so overwhelmed by it all. And the people attended. They lined the streets and all carrying their flags. And the veterans' family, they had an escort. You know, the fire department and police came, and 52 people on their motorbike from all these veterans organizations. I mean, it really was a big deal, and I think it was a big deal for the family. And I don't know, it just made you feel very proud to be an American. It just was.
Well, when you think about it, that they went from living in an apartment that wasn't very accessible, probably, to then having a beautiful home that they could call their own, that they can live in and afford, and stuff. And he gets the notoriety and the attention that he deserves for being a veteran and for giving so much to this
Yes,
country.
yes,
So that's awesome.
indeed. Hmm.
That's absolutely awesome. So, what outstanding thing is in your future next, young man? What are you going to do now?
Well, I've started writing on my sixth novel. The first two are about a fictional wedding chapel in Las Vegas, and that was a mainstream fiction book. And then the third one was a murder mystery, Murder Aboard the Queen Elizabeth II. And then the fourth one was Discreetly Yours, about the aforementioned three ladies that work for the escort agency. And
And that's
then the fifth
purely
one was the Christmas one. Sorry?
yeah, no, that I was just going to say, and that one with the three ladies from that was purely out of your imagination. You didn't do any research behind that at all.
No, I absolutely didn't. It was just I imagine it to be. But Kevin, they say write about what you know, and I haven't. I've never been married, and here's me writing two books about a fictional Las Vegas wedding chapel. What in the world do I? And then, I had the murder mystery, and I
You've
may have
never
felt
killed
like
anybody?
murdering a few people from time to time, but I've never actually done it. And then, of course, that. But I suppose of the Christmas book, I do know something about Christmas because I happen to like Christmas as a season. So that one was easier in many respects. And this one is going to be a very light paranormal book. It's about a wealthy American widow that decides to go and live back in England, where she spent her honeymoon with her husband. And she buys this Edwardian house in the south of England. And the day she moves in, she finds out that it's already occupied by the original owner who purchased it 100 years ago. And he lives there in a spirit form, and how he kind of moves in on her space, if you will. It's a very light-hearted, hopefully comical story about the relationship between the spirit and this very wealthy widow as she moves into a new home.
Do you remember there was a movie way back when? It was called The Captain and Mrs. Muir.
I think it was The Ghost of Mrs. Muir.
That's right, The Ghost of
It
Mrs.
was a
Muir.
movie and a TV series.
Yes, and so this reminds me of that, and is it kind of like that?
It was one thing that I was afraid of, that it would remind people of The Ghost of Mrs. Muir. However, this is slightly different to the extent that he is not visible to her in any shape or form. He communicates on a written piece of parched paper, and there's no pen. All of a sudden, this parched paper will suddenly appear on the table, and ink starts filling it out. So there's a lot of communicating where he writes things, and then she can speak back to him, but she can't see him.
I wouldn't even worry about it, Stephen, because it's like, do you remember True Grit
Yes, I do.
with
Yes,
John Wayne?
John Wayne. Yes, the
They
Western.
made a sequel, or they're not a sequel, but they remade that with I forget his name. Anyway, and they remade that, and most people didn't even know that there was the first one anyway.
Well, this is true. You know,
You have to be of a
well,
certain
we
age.
all think of that movie and A Fair to Remember with Deborah Carr and Cary Grant, and they remade it.
Yep,
Um, I think with Annette Bening, and they always said that was the remake. In point of fact, that An Affair to Remember with Deborah Carr and Cary Grant, that in and of itself was a remake of the original movie with Irene Dunn.
yep.
So people don't think of that version as a remake. So it's amazing how people do forget things after a certain period of time.
Well, it's
This is
it's
slightly different, and it's a fun situation.
the sad thing is that because the generations keep moving, and Hollywood keeps moving, and they've got it's people like that. I can remember from my youth that were older gentlemen or ladies at that time, like Bing Crosby and Bob Hope, and even um um Dean Martin, although he's still remembered because he has the Dean Martin Celebrity Roast. But a lot of these guys, the younger people, and when I'm talking about younger people, I'm talking about under 40.
Hmm.
Don't remember, don't never saw a Bob Hope movie or the his Christmas specials or any of that stuff,
This
and
is
stuff. So it's everything changes. So and what so now that book is brand new. So that's a really good thing.
well. This is true, and you're talking about people have never seen that. The choices these days, when you think back, there was just a few movie studios. There was MGM and Paramount and Disney and a couple of others, and um, even TV when it came out, you just had ABC, NBC, and CBS, and
Yep.
now you've got
Fox.
hundreds of channels. They're churning out movies at the rate of knots. You can't keep track of them all. There are so many being churned out, and got all these movie channels on TV and movies that never actually make it to a movie theater per se. They're just made for TV movies. There's so many, and it's the same with books. That now it's so easy to self-publish. People are publishing their own books at the rate of knots. It's you don't have to go through a traditional publisher anymore. And
No,
you don't have to go to a bookstore to buy a book. Amazon's now out there, and if your book's there and people know about it, they can get it there and drop it into their computer within 10 seconds. Um, the
it's amazing.
choices are there's so many more choices now. You're not limited to a small number of options.
Boy, and I'll tell you what. There are at least a quarter of a million active podcasts, and of all types and manners. So everybody wants to be a content creator. Some are better than others, and but everybody wants to be a writer like you, because you're a successful writer, and and you've done really well. So but it's a different day. It's a different time.
Yes, and it's not easy. Certainly if you're a self-published author, it isn't easy. That they say the average independent author essentially gives up before they've sold 100 books because the marketing is just so tough. It's
Yeah.
really hard to market. It's all very well to say, well, put your book out on Amazon. People have still got to know that it's out there. Um, and so it's really tough. But I was determined I wasn't going to be one of those authors and set up book signings and book presentations and wherever they would take me and go and talk about the books. And I've enjoyed the journey. That's the key. It's probably like what you're doing with the podcast. Um, the success is just as important, if you will, or even less important as whether you're enjoying the journey. That's what makes it fun.
It it is There is nothing but the journey. because well, I'll never reach a destination. I will continue to do this, and so will you, because it's in your blood. You just love to write, and then you love to go and do book signings and talk to people and then have a good time. So that really, and at the end of the day, that's really all that matters. That means
It is, Kevin, because when I published the first book, I went and got some help with the cover design and the typesetting and the editing and what have you, and it was going to cost over $3,000 before I'd even sold a book.
oh
And
wow.
I thought, yikes, I don't know as I want to invest this into such an unknown product. I didn't know how I was going to sell or how I was going to do, or even how good it was, to be quite frank with you. But the company that helped me, Imagine Communications, the owner said, look at it this way, Stephen. If you go on a cruise to Alaska, it's going to cost you about $5,000 and you'll have 2 weeks worth of fun. And he said, you invest this in a book. And he said, it's going to take you on a journey that you would never imagined. And you know what? He was 100% correct. It has taken me on a journey and a path that I would never have thought that I would be taking. And, life just throws you the curves. And so sometimes it isn't always about the financial investment, because there's other ways of getting the enjoyment and the satisfaction.
Oh, absolutely. And just by you getting out there and doing it, and you're just having a great time with it. And and you've got, sad to say, you've got more days behind you than ahead of you, probably. And so just make it fun for yourself and have a good time doing it, and keep active with it and keep working on it.
Yes, well, I'm still hoping that I haven't had more days past me. I'm hoping I'm going to be like Irene Cara, I'm going to live forever.
I,
In
and
reality, you're probably correct.
well, but the thing is that I don't know about you, but I don't feel like I'm 64 and my lifespan is, statistically speaking, my lifespan has got 14 years left or so on average. I don't feel that. I feel like I'm young and am going to be and spry and can live forever. And so maybe that's the secret. Maybe if you believe you can, you can. What do you think?
I think there's a lot of truth to that. And I don't know. A lot of people say, "Oh, I'm not going to retire because I don't know what I'm going. What would I do?" And then a lot of people they don't know what they're going to do when they retire. But I've got to tell you, I don't know where the days go. I don't even know where I find the time to work, because the days are just full. And it seems that I come into the office in the morning, I answer emails, and I go and check a few sites like Facebook and things like that, and I'll pay a few bills, do a deposit, write a little bit for my book or something, and I don't know. The next thing I find out it's lunchtime, and I go and have lunch, and then I come back, and the next thing the afternoon's gone, and I just don't know where the days go. And I'm not wasting any time. It's not like I'm sitting at the desk twiddling my thumbs. The time just goes.
Oh, it really does. My day started today at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I got up and I had some work I had to do and some prep work and stuff. I've done 4 podcasts today.
Oh
Uh,
my, that's
so
a lot.
it is, but and you're the 4th, by the way. But
Oh,
I enjoy them all so much, and it's now 3:45, and I'll wrap up talking to you, and then I've got more work to do, and it's like, and I keep reminding myself, you silly sucker, you're supposed to be retired. But I'm working more now than I was when I was working.
yes. Yes, it's funny when you think about it. The only thing is you're not getting that little paycheck at the end of each week or at the end of the month, but um, it doesn't matter. I'm with you. I used to have a full work day, and now I was up at 7 o'clock, and I haven't stopped either since I started in the office at 7. And I've probably got about another hour and a half after I finish talking with you. before it's all wrapped up and finished.
And then it's dinner time, and then it's and
life is what you make it.
It is. It is. Well, in the important thing, and I reference my dad a lot because he's kind of a shining example of what not to do. He was an executive with Nordstrom for like 35 years, and he worked 6 days a week, and he made good money and stuff, but he really had no life outside of that. And so, he was one of those executives that were, when he went to work, he was Mr. McDonald, and everybody said, "Oh, Mr. McDonald's coming. We got to make sure everything's right and stuff," because he was the boss. He was in charge of ladies' shoes for forever and for the entire company. And so he was like, and so everybody respected him, and he had all of this self-respect going. And then he was talking with his boss, whose last name is Nordstrom, one day when he was about 59, and he said, I might want to slow down a little bit. And the next day, this Nordstrom brought his severance package to him and said, "Here, why don't you go ahead and retire, and we'll pay you for a year, and we'll give you benefits for a year," and stuff like that. So he took that, but I think today he would say he wishes he didn't do that, because all of his friends were still working, and he no longer had an identity. He wasn't Mr. McDonald anymore. He was just Jack, that old guy down the street. And he played golf for a while, but then he fell and couldn't play golf anymore, and so he ended up sitting down. And so, because he didn't have it in him to do, to turn around and morph it into a career like what you've done, and writing books and keeping yourself vibrant, active. You're in the community. You're working with other folks to make things better for everyone. So I applaud you for that, and it's also healthy for you to do that.
Thank you, Kevin. I think, I'm not too sure as we're necessarily put on this planet to just be there for ourselves. I think people take care of me all the time. That they just do. They're looking out for me, and it's incumbent on me. I've been very blessed to help others out too, and I think that's what we're here for, to try and make our little corners of the globe just a little bit healthier and happier, and for everybody around us. That's all most of us can hope to do, unless you're a monarch or a president or something like that. We're all somewhat limited in what we can do and how we can affect change. But if we stick to it in our own communities, like those ladies with $100, they're making a difference. They're making a difference in their corner of the world.
And they don't even talk about it. That's what's interesting. And the lady that I was interviewing, she then turned around and said, "Well, the one thing that I haven't told you is that I also collect pajamas for the homeless." And she'll get this last year, she got 800 pairs of pajamas. And in her spare bedroom, she's got them sorted by size and color, and then she doles them out to the charities, the homeless shelters, and the women's shelters that need pajamas and that kind of stuff. And she didn't even tell me that. That was
bless her heart.
Yeah. So there are angels among us, which is a segment that I'm going to start doing. It's going to be called Angels Among Us, and we're going to highlight charities and people that are selflessly doing good works in our community, because they don't get talked about nearly enough.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. There's you're talking about a homeless shelter. There's a food bank not far from where I live, and it's run totally by volunteers. It's affiliated with the church, but one of the members decided to start up a food bank, and they've had it going for several years, but it's all manned by volunteers. They get people to come in and donate, and they get people to dole it all out, and they man it so many days a week, but it's all, every single bit. Nobody takes a penny for themselves for doing any financial reporting and sending out the thank you notes to the donors and all that things. And they organize golf tournament fundraisers, and it's a beautiful charity. That's Society of St. Stephen, and or volunteer, but just in the local community here for the homeless.
That is so cool, and we just need more of that. If we
Yes.
and because we're all in this thing called life together, and our community needs to grow and become a one big, great big community, and we can all work together to get that done. And thank you for the work that you're doing. That's awesome.
And thank you for what you're doing. And with a positive attitude and keep things positive, it makes a world of difference.
I'll tell
You
you,
know,
right?
there's a lot to be said about the power of positive thinking. There's an awful lot to be said about it.
No question about it. No question about it. And in order to keep my positive attitude, I'm not watching the news anymore, which I actually highly recommend.
I, I followed that path a couple of years ago. I'll tune in every now and then, but I used to be quite an avid news person. I used to like to know what was going on across the world probably because I have family in so many different countries. Um, but it's not exactly uplifting.
No.
I wish news segments would adopt like what you're trying to adopt. You said you're going to have a new podcast called Angels or For Angels. It would be nice if the the newscasts had like a 10-minute positive section out of their half hour or their hour. Say the last 10 minutes is now going to be focused on good things that are going on in this planet and
that would
highlight some things. I think
that would be
that would be a start in the right direction.
No, I agree. The sad thing is that the news guys will tell you, the ones that are doing the ratings and stuff, they'll say, "Hey, that stuff doesn't sell. We got to do the nasty stuff." I don't think so.
I think they might want to give it another try. And I would have thought if they're doing the ratings and what have you, they've got to have seen how the numbers of people who are watching these programs is just dropping and dropping and dropping, because I think the public at large is just kind of tired of it. And people like yourself and myself to a lesser degree are just turning off.
I agree. I agree. And I thank you. I would, and I want to follow you along as you go down the road. So I'd love to have you back. We'll make this an annual event, and we'll have you back next year. What do you think?
I'd love it. I was very thrilled to receive your invite to come back on your program, Kevin, because I remember when I first heard about you and I emailed you and I said, I don't think I'm the kind of guest you're looking for, but I do like what you're trying to do, put out a positive message. That's how I wrote you, and I didn't think I'd hear back. And you said, you're exactly the kind of guest I am looking for on my program.
Yeah, exactly right. I'm looking for people who are positive, following their passion, working to live every day as best they can, and doing something meaningful, and putting books out there the way you are, helping with the Alzheimer's project, helping with the doing. You're a good man, and
Thank you, Kevin.
there have got to be. And by the way, being a good man is enough, but you're doing more. That's even better.
Well, because I have been truly blessed, Kevin. It's certainly I've just been blessed since I was born, but certainly since I've come to America, I was one of those immigrants that came with two little suitcases and $500 and a job to come to. But $500 is nothing to start life in a brand new country where you don't know anybody, I might add, except one person. But I've been one of those that have been able to live the American dream, and it's been absolutely great. People have always been supportive, and it's certainly at least incumbent on me to give some of it back. It just is.
And bless you for that, sir.
Yeah.
So in any event, I want to thank you again for being here. And Stephen Murray has been our guest. Go to his website, which is authorstephenmurray.com, and discover the Christmas spirit. Pick up the book. It's brand new out, and I'm gonna go get it. I think it'd be fun to read. So, and
It's getting great reviews, which makes me happy.
Yes, it does. You're getting some really cool reviews on it. So,
Mhm.
congratulations, sir.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
And you
And
have
thanks
yours.
for listeners for tuning in.
Oh, you betcha. Well, the people will listen to this now, and they're going to get to listen to it later. We're on YouTube, and we're on Facebook, and we're all over the place. So, one of these days, you may hear that we've hit it big. We'll see. So,
And you may hit it real big too.
yeah,
We may suddenly find you on CNN or Fox News or ABC Prime Time or something like that. We never know.
I can tell you this. I can pretty much guarantee you won't find me on Fox News. But that's a personal preference. So I want to thank you again, sir. Wait right where you are. I'll be right back.
Sounds good.
Thanks for enjoying this episode all the way to the end. Please give us a like and subscribe to this channel. This has been a production of kmmedia.pro. Please visit our website, oddly enough, named kmmedia.pro, for more details about us and our mission, which is to provide great positive programming designed to inspire us all. I'm Kevin McDonald, and I'm proud of these shows, and I truly hope that you'll like them and share them with friends and family. So on behalf of our entire team, remember, be kind to each other because each other's all we've got. We'll see you next